A chance encounter. The town of Willowbrook was small, quiet, and filled with traditions. Nestled between rolling green hills and a slow-moving river, it was the kind of place where people greeted each other by name and where nothing unusual seemed to happen. But one summer, everything changed for Emma. Emma was a 20-year-old student who had just returned home after her first year at university. She loved reading, sketching in her notebook, and wandering through the town's old stone paths. Though she was bright and curious, Emma often felt lonely. Most of her childhood friends had moved away, and university life had been overwhelming. She missed the comfort of simple conversations and warm familiarity. One morning in late June, Emma decided to visit the town's library. It was her favorite place, with tall shelves full of dusty books and a quiet corner where she could disappear for hours. As she entered, she noticed something new, a wooden box on a small table near the entrance. On the box was a sign written in bold letters, "Letters of Summer. Write to someone, receive a letter back." Emma tilted her head. "What is this?" she whispered to herself. The librarian, Mrs. Harper, walked over with a smile. "It's a little project we started. People can leave anonymous letters here about life, love, or anything on their minds. Then someone else will pick it up and write back. It's a way to connect with others, especially in our quiet town." Emma felt a spark of curiosity. She had always loved writing in her journal. The idea of writing to a stranger felt exciting and mysterious, like opening a secret door. That night, after dinner, she sat at her desk with a piece of stationery. She thought for a while, then began to write. "Dear stranger, this is my first letter. I'm not sure what to say, but I'll start with something simple. I love the way the summer sun makes the river shine. Do you ever sit by the water and just listen to the world? Sometimes I feel like the world is speaking, but only if I'm quiet enough to hear it. I don't know who you are, but I hope you'll write back. Maybe we can share our thoughts, even if we never meet. Yours, E." The next morning, Emma dropped her letter into the wooden box. Her heart raced with both excitement and nervousness. What if nobody replied? Or what if they thought her letter was silly? 3 days later, she returned to the library. Mrs. Harper waved at her and handed her an envelope. Emma's eyes widened. A reply. She rushed to her favorite corner, sat down, and opened the letter carefully. The handwriting was neat but slightly tilted, as if the writer was thoughtful and patient. "Dear E, thank you for your letter. I do sit by the river sometimes. I usually go there in the evenings when the sun is low and the world feels calm. You're right, the world does seem to speak in its own way. Sometimes I think silence is its own kind of language. I'm not sure how much I should tell you. Maybe it's better if we stay strangers for now. But I'll share this. I'm 22. I grew up here in Willowbrook, and I'm someone who spends a lot of time thinking. Too much, maybe. I'd like to hear more about you if you want to share. Sincerely, a stranger." Emma smiled as she folded the paper. The words felt gentle, like they had been chosen with care. She wasn't sure why, but the thought of this unknown person, someone in the same town, writing quietly to her, made her heart feel lighter. That evening, she wrote back. Soon, the letters turned into a secret rhythm of her summer. Every 3 or 4 days, Emma and the stranger exchanged envelopes. She learned that he liked to sketch landscapes, that he enjoyed the sound of rain on rooftops, and that he sometimes played guitar late at night when he couldn't sleep. But he never gave. His name, Emma signed her letters simply as E, and he signed his as a stranger. Secrets in the letters one night, Emma sat by her window, reading his latest letter by the soft glow of her desk lamp. Dear E, I was walking by the bakery this morning and I thought of you. The smell of fresh bread reminded me of comfort, and for some reason, your letters feel the same way. Do you ever wonder if words can carry warmth? I think they can. Sometimes I feel invisible in this town, like no one really sees me, but your letters make me feel real. Maybe that sounds strange, but it's true. Yours, a stranger. Emma pressed the paper against her chest. She felt her cheeks warm, though she didn't fully understand why. His words touched something deep inside. Her, a place that longed to be seen and understood. The next day she replied, "Dear stranger, I don't think your words are strange at all. I understand what you mean about feeling invisible. Sometimes I feel like people don't really notice me, even when I'm right in front of them. But your letters, they make me feel the same way you described, real. As if someone is listening. Do you ever wonder if we might have walked past each other already? Maybe we've even smiled politely, not knowing we were writing to each other in secret. Yours, E." After sending that letter, Emma couldn't stop thinking about it. Could it be true? Could the stranger be someone she already knew, or at least had seen around town? The idea thrilled and frightened her at the same time. The river meeting by mid-July, the letters had become the most important part of Emma's days. Each one felt like a secret thread pulling her closer to the stranger. But she also felt restless. She wanted to know who he was. One afternoon, she received a letter that made her heart beat faster than ever before. "Dear E, I think I'd like to tell you something. I go to the river almost every evening, just as the sun is setting. I usually sit on the large, flat stone near the willow tree. If you ever wanted to see me, just to know who I am, that's where you'd find me. But I'll leave it up to you. If you don't come, I'll understand. Maybe it's better if we never meet. Yours, a stranger." Emma's hands trembled as she held the letter. The thought of meeting him filled her with nervous excitement. What if he was nothing like she imagined? What if he was disappointed in her? That evening, she walked slowly to the river. The golden light of the sunset shimmered across the water. Her heart pounded as she approached the willow tree. And there he was. A young man sat on the flat stone, his head slightly bowed as he sketched in a notebook. His hair was dark, a little messy, and he wore a plain white shirt. Emma stopped a few steps away, unable to breathe for a moment. He looked up. His eyes were warm, surprised, but not unkind. For a long second, they simply stared at each other as if trying to confirm that this was real. "You're E?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "And you're the stranger." He smiled, a little shy, a little nervous. "My name is Daniel." Emma smiled back. "I'm Emma," the river whispered beside them, carrying the weight of their secret letters into the fading summer light. Between friendship and something more, Emma couldn't sleep the night after meeting Daniel by the river. She lay in bed, replaying the moment over and over, the way his eyes had widened with recognition, the nervous smile that broke into something warmer, and how natural it had felt to finally put a face to the letters. She had expected awkwardness, but instead, it felt like stepping into a story she already knew, only now with clearer details. Evening conversations. After their first meeting, Emma and Daniel began to see each other by the river often. At first, they met by accident. She would walk by, pretending to be curious, and he would already be sitting on the stone with his sketchbook. But soon, their meetings became intentional. One evening, Emma brought a thermos of tea. Daniel laughed softly when she handed him a cup. "You really came prepared," he said, his eyes crinkling. "Well," Emma replied with a playful shrug, "I thought letters aren't the only way to share warmth." Daniel sipped the tea, then looked at her thoughtfully. "It's strange. We wrote so much to each other, but now I don't know what to say out loud." Emma nodded. "I feel the same. In letters, it was easier to be honest. In person, it's scarier." "Maybe we can pretend we're still writing," he suggested. Like, I'll talk as if I'm writing you a letter, and you do the same. Emma smiled. Dear stranger, she said playfully, today I am sitting by the river with you. You look nervous, but I think you're kinder than you realize. Daniel chuckled and replied, Dear E, today I discovered that you have a laugh that makes me want to laugh too. They both laughed, and just like that, the silence melted into something easy. Days of summer over the following weeks, Emma and Daniel grew closer. They still wrote letters, but now they also shared real moments together. They walked through the town's market, where Daniel teased Emma about her obsession with fresh strawberries. They spent afternoons in the library, sitting at opposite tables but passing notes like mischievous children. Sometimes they didn't need words at all. They would sit under the willow tree, simply listening to the rustle of leaves and the flow of the river. One afternoon, Emma asked him about his sketchbook. He hesitated before handing it over. Inside were drawings of the town, the river, the library, and even the bakery. But what surprised Emma most was a sketch of a girl sitting under a tree, reading a book. That's me, Emma whispered. Daniel looked away, embarrassed. I drew it before we met. I saw you a few times around town. I didn't know you were you. Emma touched the page gently, her heart fluttering. You noticed me even when I felt invisible. Daniel met her eyes. How could I not? Confusion in the heart. But as the summer deepened, Emma began to feel a quiet conflict inside her. The letters had been a safe world where words flowed freely and feelings were easier to share. Meeting Daniel had made everything more complicated. One evening, as they sat by the river, Daniel asked, Emma, do you ever wonder what this is between us? She froze, staring at the ripples on the water. What do you mean? He leaned back on his hands. I mean, are we just friends or something else? Because sometimes when we're together, I feel... He stopped himself, shaking his head. Forget it. Emma's heart raced. She wanted to ask him to finish, but the fear of what he might say held her back. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face the truth. Instead, she changed the subject, pointing to the sunset. The colors are so beautiful tonight, aren't they? Daniel gave a small smile, but his eyes seemed a little sad. A letter of doubt. That night, Emma returned to her desk and picked up her pen. She had always used letters to say what she couldn't speak aloud. Dear Daniel, sometimes I feel like the river. You can look at the surface and think it's calm, but underneath there are currents no one can see. I'm not sure what I'm feeling right now. I only know that our letters and our time together matter to me more than I expected. But I'm afraid too. Afraid that if we name what this is, we might lose it. Yours, Emma. The next day, she slipped the letter into his sketchbook when he wasn't looking. Later that evening, when he read it, Daniel didn't say anything. He simply reached over and squeezed her hand gently. Emma's chest tightened. It was a small gesture, but it spoke louder than words. A storm arrives. In late July, a heavy storm rolled over Willowbrook. Rain poured for days, flooding the riverbanks and turning the streets muddy. The library closed, and their willow tree was too soaked to sit beneath. Emma felt restless at home, missing their quiet rituals. One rainy afternoon, she decided to visit the bakery for some comfort. As she stepped inside, shaking the rain from her umbrella, she froze. Daniel was there, and he wasn't alone. He stood by the counter, talking to a young woman with long, dark hair. She laughed at something he said, and he smiled back in a way that made Emma's stomach twist. Emma quickly turned and left before either of them could notice her. Her heart pounded as she hurried through the rain. A voice inside her whispered, "Who was she? Why did he smile like that?" When she reached her room, Emma sat on her bed, tears stinging her eyes. It was foolish, she told herself. She and Daniel had never defined what they were. He was free to talk to anyone. But the thought of him smiling at another girl the way he smiled at her felt unbearable. A broken letter. That evening, Emma wrote a letter she wasn't sure she wanted to send. Dear Daniel, today I saw you at the bakery with someone. I don't know who she was, and maybe it's none of my business, but it made me realize how fragile this is between us. Maybe I let myself believe in something that was never really there. If you want to keep this just as letters and friendship, I'll understand. I only ask you to be honest with me. Yours, Emma. She folded the paper, but her hand trembled. In the end, she didn't send it. She hid it in her drawer instead, her heart aching with confusion. The truth revealed. The storm finally ended, and the sun returned. Emma avoided the river for 2 days, uncertain if she could face Daniel without blurting out her feelings. But on the third evening, as she sat in her room, a knock came at the door. She opened it to find Daniel standing there, his hair still damp from the walk, holding a small bag of strawberries. I haven't seen you in a while, he said softly. I thought maybe you were avoiding me. Emma's throat tightened. I wasn't sure if I should. Daniel looked at her carefully, then sighed. You saw me at the bakery, didn't you? Emma's eyes widened. How did you know? I saw you leave. Emma, that was my cousin Lily. She's visiting for a week. Emma blinked. Relief and embarrassment rushed through her at the same time. Oh, Daniel smiled gently. You thought it was someone else, didn't you? Emma looked down, her cheeks burning. Maybe. I don't know. I guess I was scared. There was a silence. Then Daniel stepped closer, his voice lower. Emma, I don't want there to be misunderstandings between us. The truth is, I don't just see you as a friend. I never did. Her heart pounded. Then what do you see me as? He hesitated, searching her face. As someone I care about. A lot. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were from happiness. Slowly, she nodded. I care about you too. Daniel let out a shaky breath and smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. He handed her the bag of strawberries. Then maybe we can stop hiding behind letters, at least, not all the time. Emma laughed softly, wiping her eyes. Agreed. That night, as she sat at her desk, she picked up her pen one last time. Dear Daniel, today you stood at my door with strawberries and honesty, and I realized something. The letters brought us together, but it's our voices, our laughter, and even our silences that keep us close. Maybe this summer isn't just about letters. Maybe it's about love. Yours, Emma. She folded the letter and placed it in her drawer, not to give to him, but to keep for herself. A memory of the moment their story began to change. A love that lasts. The days after Daniel's confession felt different for Emma. The town of Willowbrook was still the same. The cobblestone streets, the gentle river, the familiar bakery. But to her, everything seemed brighter. Even the simplest moments carried a warmth she hadn't felt before. When she walked through the market with Daniel at her side, she noticed the way people smiled at them, curious but kind. When they sat under the willow tree, silence no longer felt like hesitation. It felt like comfort. And when he laughed, Emma felt as though the whole summer had been worth waiting for just to hear that sound. But deep inside, she also knew something important. Summer would not last forever, and soon choices would have to be made. A new chapter of letters. Though they saw each other almost every day now, Emma and Daniel didn't stop writing letters. It became a tradition between them. Instead of leaving them in the library box, they slipped them into each other's hands, books, or even coat pockets. One morning, Emma opened her sketchbook and found a folded note. Dear Emma, you once wrote that the river speaks if you're quiet enough. I think you're the river. I didn't notice how much life there was until I sat close to you. Sometimes I wonder if this summer is a dream, but if it is, I don't want to wake up. Yours always. Daniel. Emma pressed the letter against her heart, her cheeks warm. Then she wrote back, Dear Daniel, if this is a dream, let's not wake up yet. Let's make it last as long as we can. Yours, Emma. A summer festival. Every August, Willowbrook held its summer festival. Lanterns were hung along the river, music filled the streets, and stalls sold food and little handmade trinkets. For Emma, the festival had always been something she watched from a distance. But this year, Daniel invited her to go with him. They walked through the festival side by side, the warm glow of lanterns reflecting in their eyes. Daniel bought her a small charm in the shape of a willow leaf. It reminded me of our tree, he said, fastening it onto her bracelet. Emma smiled softly. I'll keep it always. Later, as the fireworks lit up the sky, Daniel and Emma stood close together. The bursts of color painted their faces in light and shadow. Emma felt his hand brush against hers, hesitant at first, then steady. She turned her head and found him already looking at her. Emma, he whispered, his voice almost lost in the noise of the fireworks. May I? She nodded before he finished the question. Their lips met softly, gently, as if both of them were afraid the moment might shatter if they weren't careful. But it didn't shatter. It bloomed. When they pulled back, Emma saw his smile, and she knew the letters had only been the beginning of something real. Clouds of change, but as the festival glow faded and the days shortened, reality returned. Emma's second year of university was approaching, and she would have to leave Willowbrook in September. One afternoon, as they sat by the river, Emma finally voiced the worry that had been pressing on her heart. Daniel, she said softly, what happens when summer ends? Daniel closed his sketchbook, frowning. You mean when you go back? She nodded, her chest heavy. I'll be far away most of the year. We won't be able to meet by the river or walk to the market. What if this doesn't last? Daniel was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, Emma, I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise I don't want this to end, not when we've only just begun. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. And if the letters are all we have again? Then we'll write them, he said firmly, just like before. Only this time we'll write knowing who's on the other side. Tears filled Emma's eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from the hope his words gave her. Letters across distant September arrived too soon. On her last evening in Willowbrook, Emma and Daniel met at the willow tree one final time. The air was cooler, carrying the first hints of autumn. Daniel handed her a sealed envelope. Don't open it until you're on the train tomorrow, he said. Emma nodded, trying to hold back tears. She gave him her own envelope in return. Then this one is for you. They hugged tightly, and Emma felt the world pause around them. For a moment, it was just the two of them, holding on as if they could keep summer from slipping away. The next morning, as the train pulled out of the station, Emma opened Daniel's envelope. Dear Emma, this is not a goodbye. This is just another letter in our story. Wherever you are, I'll be writing, and I'll be waiting for your words. I'll meet you again by the river. Yours always. Daniel. Emma pressed the letter to her lips, tears running down her cheeks. She opened her notebook and began writing back immediately, knowing he would be reading her words soon. Seasons of love. The months that followed were filled with letters, phone calls, and stolen weekends when Emma managed to visit Willowbrook. The distance was hard, but their words carried them through. Emma found herself looking forward to Daniel's letters more than anything else. Sometimes they were long, filled with sketches of the river or descriptions of his days. Sometimes they were short, a single line that still made her smile. thinking of you today." And Emma always replied, "Me too. Always." A return. To Willowbrook 1 year later, the following summer, Emma returned to Willowbrook. She walked straight to the library, where the wooden Letters of Summer box still stood. She smiled, remembering how it all began. From behind her, a familiar voice said, "Looking for new letters, or old ones?" Emma turned and saw Daniel, standing there with the same shy smile he'd had the first day they met, only now it was a smile she knew by heart. She ran into his arms, laughing through her tears. "Neither," she whispered. "I was looking for you." Daniel held her close. "And you found me, just like always." Epilogue. The river speaks years. Later, people in Willowbrook still talked about the couple who met through the library's letterbox. Emma and Daniel often returned to the willow tree, now calling it their place. One summer evening, as the sun set and the river glowed gold, Emma placed a hand on Daniel's arm and smiled. "Do you remember the first thing I ever wrote to you?" she asked. Daniel grinned. "That you loved how the summer sun made the river shine." Emma nodded. "It still does, and so do you." He kissed her forehead, and the river whispered beside them, carrying the sound of their laughter, their love, and their story into the endless summer sky.